Hey, this week we're talking about the Wayland future yet again, Gnome's documentation problems, a Pipewire update, Mozilla killing Pocket, kernel announcements, This Week in Plasma, SteamOS, CachyOS. It's a lot of fun. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is the Untitled Linux Show, episode 204, recorded Saturday, May the 24th, the Scrollodex. Hey folks, it is Saturday, and you know what that means. It is time for the Untitled Linux Show. We're going to geek out about Linux and open source, some hardware, some software. We're probably going to talk about Wayland and video cards, all the normal stuff we talk about. But what's going on this week? I've got the regular crew here with me, and welcome to the guys. I am on location for those of you that watch, maybe for those of you that listen too. I may sound just a little bit different, borrowing a different mic on location in somebody else's office, been graciously loaned to me, but that's all right. The show must go on, and we've got a lot of fun stuff for today. Starting off, we've got Rob, who is going to talk about, I think, Wayland, right?
Yes,
that desktop environment enablement technology from the future. The one that we're all running now. Everybody's running Wayland. No holdouts.
Once again, we're saying goodbye to X11. And hello, welcome to our new Wayland world. Our Wayland only world, that is. All right, so I know I feel like I keep saying this on here over and over through one story or another. You know, we just keep progressing forward, you know, with the continued growth of Wayland and the continuing demise of X11, that is. Don't get that confused with the different X. So this week, the Fedora engineers and steering committee have signed off on having the next version of Fedora 43, that's Fedora 43, to be fully Wayland only and completely removing the Gnome X11 packages. This change is in keeping ahead of Gnome's plans, as they plan to drop X11 in a couple of releases in GNOME 50. And right now they're on 48. GNOME has taken the first step this week by removing X11 sessions by default in the GNOME Display Manager when to be merged in their upcoming GNOME 49 release. This means that the underpinnings of X11 are still planned to be upstream GNOME 49, but won't be available as a default option or as an option by default, unless you go on and modify your GDM in your system to support X11. And then also, in their own words, quote, "This is the first step towards deprecating the X11 session. X11 has been receiving less and less testing. We have been defaulting to the Wayland session since 2016, which really surprises me." Back to the quote, "And it's about time we disable and eventually drop the X11 session completely." So it really surprises me that it's been that long that they've been defaulting to it. But yeah, they're finally, 10 years now making that step. So though now, with Fedora moving ahead to completely remove X11 from its next release, there is some talk that GNOME might progress the removal of X11 a little quicker, or at least a release earlier to align with the Fedora removal. But we'll see what happens there. But I know there's still X11 diehards out there. For you X11 fans, you can still enable X in GNOME by adding or uncommenting, because it should already be on there, the line that says X org enable equals true. Just make sure that's uncommented or set to equal true, whatever you want to do in your gdm.cfg file, and you can still have your X. And for those worried about your old X11 apps not working, well, suck it up. They just need to get ahead. Give it the times. No, I'm just kidding. There is still X Wayland. It's still going to be the shim there available for those, along until those things, those apps you're using get updated or replaced for now. I mean, eventually it's not. But so if you have an app that requires it, push those devs to get that thing updated. Come on.
Mm-hmm. So I went into the KDE Fedora chat room, and because famously there is still the KDE X11 packages against the KDE special interest group's wishes, but the packages still exist because a different Fedora developer, a different Fedora packager said, no, I'll keep making them. I'm like, oh, fine, I guess. So I went in and I'm like, so with GNOME dropping it, does this mean that you're finally going to go murder those packages? And they're like, no, we can't do that yet. Okay, fine. So, we've talked about this before, but I want to mention it real quick again. So Keith says 512 says, this news is annoying. And I think he's saying this slightly tongue-in-cheek, but still. I thought Linux was about being able to do things the way you want to. You should be able to use X11. This is not a dictatorship. Who do you think you are, Windows? And you can still run X11 if you want to. The problem is that nobody's working on X11. There's nobody maintaining it. There's maybe one guy maintaining it, and he is not the one that wrote it, and so does not know the code base all that well. And so let's just say that the next time they find terrible vulnerabilities in X11, there's not really going to be anybody there to fix them, and maybe there's not anybody there, looking for them out in the public. And what you're eventually going to find, what you're quickly discovering, actually, within the next release or two of all these major distros, is distros are just going to stop shipping the X11 server, not X-Wayland. X-Wayland's going to be around for a long time, but the actual X11 server, they're going to look at it and go, this is unmaintained, therefore, by our rules, we are not allowed to ship it. And so within 2 years, none of your major distros are going to ship the X11 server at all for that reason.
But if you're a diehard X11 fan, you can download it and install it yourself.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's going to be boutique distros for years, maybe decades to come, that are like similar to, we don't ship System D. If we don't ship Wayland, you can run X11. So if you want to, have your Linux experience from the aughts, then you can have your System D free, Wayland free, SysV init plus X11 Linux experience.
Yeah, there's still plenty of vulnerable old software you can install and download anytime you want. So as long as someone has the code out there, you can still use it just like anything else. But yeah, with everyone moving away from it, the developers, the distros, there's just a lot less testing on it, and to be something to be wary of.
Well, I was going to say, saying someone's maintaining, even one person, is pretty generous. There is one person that's added a couple little niche features for their particular use. Basically, it's pretty much unmaintained. But like you said, there's going to be those boutique distributions, also known as "Welcome to my operating system, hackers."
Yes,
the front door is open.
Well, I mean, so running X11, it's not like it's available on the network. It is, X11 is good for escalation of privilege because it generally runs as root, but it's not really all that useful for actually getting into a system. So it's not like it's the end of the world to run it. One of the other interesting things here that's kind of part of this is that Red Hat just went general availability with Red Hat 10. And Red Hat engineers are actually a big part of what was keeping X11 sort of on life support with patches and fixes. And so with them, sunsetting the previous version and moving into Red Hat 10, like you're losing the few engineers that were doing the development on it.
Yeah, and we've talked about this previously, but for anybody that wasn't around, or in our earlier days, the people that were maintaining and working actively on X11, they're the ones doing Wayland now.
Yeah.
So that's where they went.
All right. Well, let's talk about something that is not at all controversial, and that is the Linux audio subsystem, because nobody's ever hated on any of the replacements for that.
Audio and video subsystem.
Oh.
And this week we hear from two of my favorite reporters, Marius Nestor and Barbie Borisov. They both wrote about the Pipewire project's latest release of Pipewire 1.4.3. It brings support for correctly writing MIDI streams, better error handling, support for sending custom commands, support for using the default value of filters, and many NetJack 2 improvements, including fixes for the drive manager roles. For users and developers who dig into diagnostics, the PW-MIDI dump tool that I went over a while ago now correctly debugs UMP sysrt messages, making troubleshooting MIDI data flows easier. At the core, Pipewire level, the update introduces the ability for all commands to be directed to the node, unlocking the potential for sending custom commands and providing greater flexibility for developers and power users alike. I know we've got some of those power users out there. Mm-hmm. On the modules front, beyond NetJack 2 fixes, improvements to filter graph, state management within the filter chain translate to more stable and predictable audio processing chains. The SPA, or Simple Plugin API, component receives several targeted fixes as well, to include raw format buffer handling in v4l2, and it's optimized to avoid dropping important headers. ALSA support sees enhancements, particularly around audio channel validation, helping to ensure more accurate audio device integration. There are still more details in Marius and Bobby's articles that I haven't even touched on.
Yeah, interesting. So I have to go back. Every time we talk about either Pipewire or OBS, I have to go back and look at the different patches that are out there for making like the Pipewire virtual camera work in OBS. That's the thing that I'm waiting for. Like that's when all of this is really going to get interesting and get cool. But you know, obviously we do all kinds of stuff with Pipewire for audio.
When I went down the rabbit hole looking into this article, it looks like we're getting closer.
A little bit, yes.
I'm definitely waiting for it. Because right now, if anybody watching, my green screen's a little funky. It's because my OBS, I started the show and it went about 2 minutes before it locked up and crashed on me, and it just loses connection with the camera. And I need that Pipewire video so I can get rid of the loopback device.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to being able to do all the things with video that we can now do with audio with Pipewire, where you know people will start writing video plugins and you can just drag and drop and you know have virtual cables to route things around. Yeah, interesting. People are talking about like you said, Ken. It's getting closer.
Yep. To the point where you've got Pipewire options from within OBS for capturing video.
Mm-hmm. Well, so that's kind of the new thing. That's interesting. LibCamera is all about let's just not even use V4L2. Let's just go straight to Pipewire for capturing some of these new webcams, and that's kind of a big deal because then all of a sudden the browsers had to, running a browser on Linux, you've got to support Pipewire as an input. Firefox does it very well at this point, from what I understand. And so, now it's just we just now need to get to the point to where your video handling things can do kind of raw Pipewire output streams. And that's sort of what we're waiting on for things to get fun.
I got a feeling it may be easier in the interim to create a virtual V4L2 device or Pipewire device to capture your OBS output and then have that streamed into Chromium.
Yeah, boy, that's a fun. That's kind of a mind trip of what you're doing there. You have an adapter to a virtual device. Whatever works. All right, let's talk Plasma. Which, interestingly, just a little plug. I've actually got Nate Graham, who I think Jeff is going to talk about. We're talking with him on Floss Weekly this upcoming Tuesday.
Wow.
Yeah,
Who's your co-host?
Cool. I don't have a co-host yet, so that's why I went ahead and mentioned it.
Anybody out there want to volunteer?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that maybe we should get Rob to do it because he's not running KDE and he's kind of a KDE skeptic.
It made me a convert.
Maybe we can get him to convert. All right, Jeff, what's the story?
I'm already preaching the KDE gospel. So, With Rob discussing GNOME this week, we can't overlook what's happening in KDE, and most of us are probably using Plasma 6.3.6 or a similar version, somewhere in the 6.3 stack there. In his blog, Nate Graham highlights KDE's focus on bug fixes in preparation for Plasma 6.4 release, which is scheduled in about 3 weeks. While the priority is stability and a few features have been introduced, little tweaks here and there just to make things even better and add a little extra polish before 6.4 is released. Such a tweak is time of day wallpapers. So these automatically switch between light and dark versions based on the daylight cycle. So, and these are special wallpapers. So when you look to install them, they will be indicated as dynamic. And this would be in the wallpaper manager. Another notable UI improvement is in Discover's in Discover, which is KDE's graphical interface for installing programs. So when you're searching, wallpapers and other add-ons are now excluded from results unless you specifically request making the searches, because then it makes the searches more relevant. Personally, I found it frustrating to sift through excessive add-ons and wallpapers when trying to locate a specific program. So in this change, it's going to be a welcome improvement and just help find what you actually want to find. Looking ahead to Plasma 6.4, the audio volume widget is receiving a refresh to make it less cluttered, particularly for users with multiple audio devices. And while the changes aren't groundbreaking, they help smooth out the rough edges, making the interface more streamlined and organized. I know I've got quite a few on mine, and it sometimes can get a little confusing. You've got to really pay attention to what's going on so you know what's happening. And I looked at some of the screenshots of the new interface, and I think it makes it look a little cleaner and a little more organized so you can better find what you want. I won't go into great detail yet, but several UI improvements are also planned for Plasma 6.5.0, but we'll cover more of those when it's closer to release. We haven't got 6.4 yet, so let's tackle that first. In the meantime, Plasma 6.3.6, in the latest in the 6.3 series, they included some bug fixes. So they included a KWin crash fix when disconnecting multiple KVM connected screens. Screen tearing settings now apply immediately without requiring a restart. The removal of a brief graphical glitch that appeared along the edge of the screen during login, but it was before Plasma's splash screen or the desktop loads. And they also improved Wayland's app behavior, ensuring they open on the requested screen and it more reliably matches the one that they wanted. So that'll help the lingering X stuff out there. You can find a full list of bug fixes in the show notes, including performance for improvements across various Plasma versions. And when I say performance improvements, it was like there's some like little clipboard things that open quicker now, and so not overall desktop performance, just a few little pieces going better. Quick status update: the number of high priority Plasma bugs has decreased from four to 3 this week. And the count of 15-minute Plasma bugs has risen from 22 to 27. Now, while bug numbers fluctuate, many issues are actively being resolved. So they're, as new ones come in, they're moving other ones through the pipeline and solving them. So don't think these are very static. If you look at the show notes, you'll see there's a lot of bug fixes going on. So it's a pretty dynamic list or number of bugs here. Check out the article linked in the show notes for full details on all these changes, bug fixes, and performance enhancements, and everything KDE.
Yeah, very cool. I'm very tempted when I get back home to go ahead and update to Fedora 42 and run the KDE 6.4 beta, just to see, to kick the tires, as it were, and see what's going on there. They've got some really interesting stuff that they've done, and I want to play with it.
So,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, as you implied earlier, I'm not a KDE user these days. I have been a user way back, early 2000s for a long time. And I just had to give Gnome some love and try it out. I like it. But the one question I do have, Jeff, because I haven't kept up with it, not really since before KDE 6, is where on their Wayland, getting rid of X11, have they disabled X11 sessions by default yet?
Wayland's the default option. You can still switch. There's a little switcher in the bottom left corner that you can use to go back to X11. So it's the default choice, but it's not like it's really hidden. It's just a toggle.
Mm.
So it's where Gnome is now, right before this next release. So it's getting there.
Yeah.
Now, are you talking about the KDE distro?
No, the desktop. You're thinking KDE Neon.
Yeah, no, I know what Ken's getting at, and that isn't that really a distro choice, whether it's going to default to X11 or Wayland?
Really, I suppose it could be, but I mean,
yes, and
the 6 series, yeah, because the 6 series is designed by KDE. So I mean, you could have a distro force Gnome, X11 into Gnome, mm-hmm. and still say, well, it wasn't the default, It's KDE 6 was planned to be Plasma first. So they've been dumping, into Wayland first. So they've been dumping everything into Wayland.
And
isn't it KDE 7 that's going to be Wayland only?
That I don't know.
I don't remember.
Which means that if it's Wayland only, and your distro has the option to switch back to X11, what desktop is it going to use?
Not KDE.
I do want to expand on my yes or no comment, just to clarify, though. Yes, in that a desktop environment has their defaults. They set them. That's what they are. But yes, and also that the distros should have the ability to modify those defaults as they see fit. So yes and no.
Yeah.
So
but it doesn't mean you make good choices all the time.
Going distro agnostic, Gnome and KDE are moving forward to Wayland only.
Yes.
Looks like KDE 7. Whenever KDE 7 is released, that is when they will drop the X11 support. Wonder how many lines of code they're going to be able to get rid of when that happens.
But once you've picked a distro, then that distro may modify it to whatever they're currently using as the default.
Sure.
Yeah. Mm. But yeah, there's going to be a lot going away. And now this is just going from memory, but I think based on the timeline, we probably would see KDE 7 end of the calendar year-ish, first of the next year, because they usually only go to about 6, maybe 0.7 before they rev to the next whole number.
If a distro wants, though, they don't even have to use X11 and Wayland. They can make their own and use that. They can use. I know there's something else out there.
There's a couple of others,
and they can use those too, even though it's not made for it. You can do whatever you want.
There's something that's not X11 or Wayland.
Not popular, but yeah.
I'm curious what this is that exists that's not either of those two. That's not just, curses on the terminal.
Well, I was going to say a bash cell.
Yeah. I guess there for a while with KDE, you could run it with a frame buffer direct, and it wasn't using any of those things. I don't know if that's even still a thing. That was for like KDE on embedded systems.
Arcan? Was that?
I don't know.
There is also Micro XWin, DFB, Y, Fresco, and Zinth.
Basically stuff nobody.
Yeah, stuff nobody uses that
uses.
Oh yeah, that was my whole point. You can.
What I'm really curious about with all of those is like, are any of those actually maintained by anybody, or is this a 15-year-old project that's nobody's touched?
The list I pulled up doesn't say whether or not they're maintained.
And I bet you a lot aren't, because when you have something like X you're going to replace, or Wayland, yeah, we're going to do it better and we're going to do it right, until they go, oh my gosh, this is so much work. We had no idea that this was like 12 full-time jobs to do this.
Yeah, or their hobby projects.
DFB, by the way, is a display server that was developed by Dell.
Okay, interesting. Probably for running inside their BIOS or something like that. Anyway, there is another big company that is not Dell, it's somebody else, that just released some open source. I saw this story, Rob. I'm not surprised that you're the one that picked it up.
Well, I mean,
he's on it, all over it.
I knew it was going to be Rob.
So this week, not Canonical, not Red Hat, but Microsoft. So they had their big developers conference called Microsoft Build. And what else would we expect from a Microsoft developers conference but more open source news? Unfortunately, this isn't the big news that some of us have been waiting for, Windows being open sourced, or Microsoft releasing their own Linux distro. Oh wait, they already
happened.
But what is in the news this week? It's still pretty cool. So first on my list is that WSL is now open source and available for all on GitHub under the MIT license. The act of open sourcing allows Microsoft to close WSL's very first GitHub issue from 10 years ago, way back on April 6th, 2016. Surinath opened an issue saying, quote, hopefully Bash on Windows will be open source. I believe Bash on Windows is what they first called it. The response at that time wasn't completely negative, but it wasn't positive. All they said is, quote, we have no firm plans as yet, but we're not averse to open sourcing some of this tech. And look where we are now. 10 years later, WSL is open source. With this, Microsoft is hoping to get some community involvement, up helping make it even better. So if you're interested, there's something for you. Next on my list, and I bet you thought it was the end of new command line tools like command line text editors on Windows. Well, it isn't, because Microsoft announced a new open source command line text editor for Windows, and it's written in Rust. So think of it like the Nano or Vim, Vi, whatever, for Windows. It's still in early development stages, but if you want to contribute to that, that's also open source under the MIT license, I believe it was. Third on my list is they announced they will be open sourcing the GitHub Copilot in VS Code. And not much to say about that, but hey, there's another one. But finally on my, I don't want to get into too much about AI on this show because I don't want any more hate mail. Oh, just kidding. I've really only had like one message. It was even close to hate mail, and it wasn't hate mail. It's just a critique. But anyway, the final major contribution, Microsoft contribution, is to the Mesa 3D graphics stack. They have contributed 62,000 lines of code introducing a new Gallium 3D front end. 62,000 lines of code. That means they actually have some real developers working on this stuff. They're paying them. Anyway, Microsoft's main interest in Mesa appears to be getting more API implemented atop Direct3D 12 hardware drivers, as well as where it ties into their Windows subsystem for Linux, or WSL, as I mentioned earlier, support. As we all know, it's obvious here, Microsoft loves Linux and open source. because they just keep on contributing.
It's kind of a meme, and you're kind of joking, but at the same time, I have been very impressed with the streak that Microsoft is on with actually doing things that are useful. Now, they don't hit it out of the park every time, because there is also Microsoft recall is a thing that is happening, and my words have not been warm for that.
Let's get away from recall a minute and look and focus on WSL again, because it's been an exciting year for WSL.
Yeah.
Fedora can be set up, Arch Linux, and it's also already got its first GitHub issue closed.
Yep, I said after
a
10 years,
9-year-old one.
10 years.
Well,
2016. It's 2026 now.
Here's an alternate
Wait,
take.
never mind. It's 2025. Oh wow. I don't know what year it is.
Rob is living in the future. Good.
Thank you for coming back to visit us.
Jeff,
here's an alternate take. Microsoft is offloading some of their development to the open source community so they can take those developers and dump them into AI and their cloud.
I mean, that's not entirely wrong, I'm sure. That's fine, though. I would prefer something to be open sourced so that I can go in and fix it, or the thousands of other people like me, rather than it being closed source and having to depend on sometimes less than stellar Microsoft engineers to fix it. I'm okay with it. I accept your terms.
Their driving force might more be economic than goodwill, and I mean, yes, it is good that they open sourced it, but it could be that it's they know they've got to stay on Linux if they want any development to be done on Microsoft, since most of the heavy duty infrastructure runs on Linux, and so that makes them relevant, and then they get to have the win of offloading. But I'm kind of cynical sometimes. I don't
even think that's a cynical take. I would go so far as to say that if a company looks at it and they decide that they would lose by open sourcing something, they probably shouldn't do it. Open source is such a powerful thing, and it makes so much sense for that very reason, that you get fixes and security enhancements and all the other advantages that open source gives you from the community. I don't even think that idea of goodwill necessarily even has to be part of the equation.
I think they're utilizing open source the way open source is meant to be. It's not like they're doing like some companies, using open source and completely I don't know, not contributing, not paying, not giving anything back to the community, like what Amazon has been. I
was wondering which example.
You can whatever the word is. Not say anything about this, but like
accuse yourself from this conversation.
There we go. That's the word. Yeah,
Rob, I think I've actually got a article down in the rabbit hole that touches on this.
Oh, you have to pull it out and tag it onto this particular conversation.
But I think it helps to improve the return on investment.
Yeah.
But I guess the one thing I was trying to get is, some software things have tried to change their licenses to because of how certain big companies had treated them, which didn't necessarily go well for them either. But it's a lose-lose kind
usually
of.
Doesn't. All right. Well, speaking of big companies trying to watch their bottom line that we have been watching for years now, it feels like. Ken, what's getting killed at Mozilla this week?
Don't play the trumpet yet. We've still got a little bit of time. But we can thank Bobby Borisov, Michael Larabelle, and Joyce Snowden, because they all wrote this week about the end of Pocket. Who remembers Pocket? I first knew of it as a Firefox extension called Read It Later by Nathan, I hope I'm saying this pronounced correctly, Weiner, in August of, we're going all the way back to 2007, folks. Now, Weiner's intention was for the application to be like a TiVo directory for web content and to give users access to that content on any, I repeat, any device. I still remember using it to store web pages that I then transferred to my Palm devices.
Oh my.
Now, in 2017, Mozilla was gracious enough to acquire Pocket and then integrated it into the Firefox web browser. You no longer had to worry about it being an extension. It was built into it. This past Thursday, Mozilla announced Pocket will shut down. July 8th, 2025. Now, users can export saves anytime until October 8th of this year, after which their data will be permanently deleted. Now, if you also use the fake spot extensions, mobile apps or website, effective July 1st of this year, it is no longer available. Now, the fake spot feature within Firefox, known as Review Checker, will shut down on June 10th, 2025. If you're going, what is fake spot? It was basically an application for checking reviews. Now, Joey asked, why kill Pocket? Mozilla said, and here I am quoting from their blog, the way people use the web has evolved, so we're channeling our resources into projects that better match their browsing habits and online needs. While Pocket is shutting down, we will continue to invest in this promise through the new tab experience, our email newsletter, and more. Well, I just want to say goodbye, Pocket. I do recommend reading the articles linked in the show notes, especially on how Mozilla is handling paid subscriptions. Yes, there were paid subscriptions for both Pocket and Fake Spot.
Interesting.
I never knew anybody who used them.
So I got to ask no opinion. So is this Mozilla trying to follow Google steps, killing everything, or are they just focusing on what's important, like we continually always say they need to do?
Or are those the same thing?
Okay,
I think
no,
so,
they're not. Okay, with Mozilla, they could be the same thing. With Google, no, they've killed good things, very good things. If they want to focus, they have a lot more things to kill that they shouldn't start.
Google doesn't have focus, I would argue.
Indeed.
But no, Mozilla, yeah, they got too spread. I don't know where some of these ideas came from, where they're like, this is going to be a great idea. I'm like, in what little fishbowl were you coming up with this? No, just make the browser really good. That's it, and then make Thunderbird really good. I'm good with that.
I'm going to take a risk on step out on this creaky limb and say Mozilla probably acquired a bit too much over the years.
Yeah, I think that's one of the same.
I mean,
like both of these things were projects that existed outside of Mozilla that they bought. And so like if you really love Pocket, it sounds like Ken actually uses it. Ken is the only person I know that actually ever used Pocket.
Used.
When you have all that Google money, you have to spend it somewhere. So,
and even then, I was using the free form of it.
Right.
Until I found out about Caliber's news feeds.
Yeah. So for the 3 people worldwide that actually still use Pocket, here's the good news for you. It's open source. It was originally an extension. I am sure it will come back as an extension. It can happily live outside of Mozilla. And so nothing was lost.
Convert it to a plugin for Caliber.
And I was going to,
sure.
Well, I was going to say, and that's not a creaky limb that you were out on, Ken. That was a steel reinforced wood floor that just had a little noise in it.
Yeah,
that's Ken's kind of risk.
Well, so I kind of hinted at this during the segue there, but I think we're going to see a lot more of this because Mozilla has brought in a new CEO who is not a shaman. And what is the thing that the new CEO said? Like his very first blog post that he wrote, we're going to go back to fundamentals. So I very much anticipate seeing lots of this from Firefox. Lots of, let's shed all of this weird crap that we've picked up over the last few years. Try to get back to fundamentals. Here's what Firefox is really about, and this is what we're going to work on.
Even though this may have been a very, very small source of income, we're spending more maintaining it than we're making. Get rid of it.
Even if they were making
a source of income,
even if they were making money on it,
revenue,
even if they were making profit on it, I would still maintain that the ability to narrow the focus internally, but also just the with the outside world, the perspective of the outside world on Firefox, being able to say, this thing that, all 3 people used and all 3 of them paid for it, but it doesn't matter. We're going to ditch that and get rid of it. It's bringing about conversations like these, which is a good thing for the Firefox brand. Because what is the one thing that everybody wants Firefox to do? Focus on what wants Mozilla to do, and that is focus on Firefox and Thunderbird. And by killing a product like this, what is the signal that they're sending to the world? They're focusing on Firefox and Thunderbird, dang it, and they're getting rid of all this extra stuff. So it's a huge win. It's a great idea.
Yeah, they're getting out of the city and going to the country.
I don't
understand that.
Now you're on the creaky limb, Ken.
Yeah.
With that segue.
Oh, goodness. Oh, he's talking about SteamOS.
They're riding a segue.
Oh, yes, we're riding a segue out into the country, I guess. Jeff, save us. What's going on with SteamOS?
Well, the new version of SteamOS comes with a steel guitar and a fiddle, so it's known as Go. No, I'm just kidding. So this next story actually made big waves in the mainstream tech press because it signals an opening up of SteamOS. Now, the big news, SteamOS 3.7.8, known as Go Country, has officially been released. Some key updates in this version include a newer Arch Linux base, Linux kernel 6.11, updated Mesa graphics drivers, and Plasma 6.2.5 for desktop mode. Now, in addition, SteamOS now supports frame limiting with variable refresh rate displays, both internal and external. And a noticeable improvement is the addition of a battery charge limit control, allowing users to set maximum charge level for their Steam Deck. Why does this matter? Well, limiting the charge to 80%, for example, can extend battery health over the long term, especially for devices that are frequently plugged in or rarely depleted. Now, why did the mainstream tech press take notice of this release? SteamOS has now officially added support for the Lenovo Legion Go S, while also improving compatibility with other AMD-powered handhelds like the ROG Ally from Asus and the original Legion Go. Now, this update also includes an improved SteamOS recovery image for repairing the Steam Deck and the Legion Go S. And it also makes it easier for users to test the SteamOS on their own AMD-powered handhelds. And while this might seem like limited to existing hardware, the reality is that most handhelds today are powered by AMD CPUs with integrated GPUs, meaning SteamOS could become a common choice for future devices. For example, attempts have been made to release Windows-based handhelds, but those devices have struggled with poor reviews, or the ones that actually worked pretty well, they were exorbitantly priced. I mean, the one I can think of that got rave reviews, it was costing several $1,000s for a handheld. Yeah, it was like, okay, this is just nuts. That doesn't even, to me, it doesn't fit with the idea of a handheld, which should be at least a somewhat affordable device. But I digress. While many of the latest fixes and improvements specifically target the Legion Go S and other AMD handhelds, this release isn't just about handheld gaming. It also includes significant graphics performance and desktop enhancements, along with features aimed at developers. So, looking ahead, SteamOS could see a widespread adoption across more handhelds, But a bigger question remains, how close are we to seeing a full-fledged SteamOS desktop experience? A modern one, not the old one that's out of date now. And if more handhelds embrace SteamOS, what could this mean for gaming as a whole? At this point, it's unclear whether mainstream developers, I think it's pretty clear that mainstream developers are not going to start developing Linux games. But we might see an increasing trend of games designed to be Proton friendly, basically Linux emulator friendly, because DirectX 12 provides a stable development interface, avoiding some of the fragmentation that Linux can sometimes face. I mean, even Linus Torvalds has said in the past, he had a Dive application that they didn't make for Linux because he talked about the fragmentation of Linux. While everybody has choice, it's hard to write a program, and especially if you don't have a development team that's used to having a lot of Linux history and skill set to make it work across a wide number of distributions. So overall, the future of Linux gaming looks brighter than ever, and maybe just in a few years, we'll see Linux reaching low double-digit numbers in this Steam survey. Here's to hoping.
Yeah, it's interesting to see it. I will be curious to see if anybody does any SteamOS powered desktops or SteamOS powered conventional consoles that are not intended to be portable. I think those would be really fascinating too.
And this would tie in with last week's story where we talked about the AMD AI Max Plus chips, which. Yeah, I know I'm leaving out a whole bunch of letters and numbers in there.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not the whole name.
No, that was
we don't have time for that.
Right.
Yeah. But at the time in the story, I even commented, they're almost like mini desktop replacement chips. I mean, they're because of the power and what they can do. And, they eat battery pretty good too. But they are meant to be mobile. They're much more power efficient than the full-fledged desktop chips, but that could lead to, hey, here's a nice little console, and especially maybe it comes in like a NUC style form factor, one of those little tiny form factors. You don't have a physical drive, you run Steam on it. It's all right there.
And you don't have to worry about having problems where it thinks your Super NES controller's hooked up when it's not.
That is true. They did fix that. I mean, now I should mention, take a look at the article in the show notes, because there's a lot of details that I left out of things they fixed, they corrected, there was a lot of good updates, but I just wanted to kind of catch on why the mainstream tech press sat up and took note of this, that they're predicting a lot of future handhelds coming out. SteamOS.
I've also seen some speculation online, wondering, with our end of 10 discussion last week, speculating, wondering if like Valve, if they may like release a desktop. We haven't heard of any leaks like that. Maybe they should in time for like the end of Windows 10, something to kind of fill that gap as a gaming desktop.
That would be pretty interesting, actually. If it was, hey, your Windows 10 machine, I could just imagine this pop up next time somebody starts Steam on Windows 10. Your Windows 10 machine is about to be obsoleted. Click here to upgrade to SteamOS.
Oh wow, that's like playing the Windows pop-up game on them.
No, if they did it Windows style, it would just do it automatically.
Well, yeah, you don't force it, but I mean, it's okay.
At least would get a warning.
It's more like using IE and Google saying, "Hey, upgrade to Chrome," or
would you like to get to Google faster? Click here to upgrade to Chrome. Yeah.
Would you like to get to your games faster?
Yeah. I could see it. I mean, who knows? I could see SteamOS. I could see Valve jumping on the end of 10 bandwagon and becoming part of that.
Now,
sure.
And I think
the SteamOS, does it support ARMS, the Arch 64 option chips?
I don't think they have an official ARM64 image.
I think they do have some support, but I don't think it's official yet.
Right.
I thought I remember reading that they did have it. It's just
something
not
they've been
quite ready.
working on, I think.
Yeah, it's not quite ready for prime time yet.
Yeah.
When that gets to where it's ready for prime time, I bet you see a lot more game consoles come out
That are ARM64. So there's two problems with that. One, so far we don't have ARM64 chips that have quite the horsepower that an AMD 64 does. And the other is that we don't have games that are being made for ARM64. And so all of these are having to do like just-in-time cross-compilation to run those AMD 64 compiled games on the ARM64.
And that is part of the story that we talked about in the past. So
yeah, I mean, you can do it, and people are having reasonably good success for some of these titles, but it's not like, running in ultimate mode, the newest thing. So like, you're not going to be running, you're not going to be running Doom Dark Ages or whatever they call that, and on ultimately high graphics and all of that. It's not quite there.
I think that makes more sense for handhelds possibly, but for consoles that you're plugging in and you have all the power in the world. I mean, it's not like Xbox or PlayStation or any of them are using ARM. So I don't think it makes sense for any other console to really use ARM yet, at least.
What's in the Nintendo Switch?
The Switch is ARM, I believe. But again, that is a portable.
With NVIDIA graphics.
It's a docked portable. Yeah, so it's the NVIDIA Tegra, which is an ARM, and it's got NVIDIA's fun ARM-based stuff on it. Yeah, I've got a buddy that does development on this stuff, not for Nintendo. NVIDIA uses some of his stuff. Hasn't ever paid him for it, but that's a whole different story. Whole different story. He tried to get a job at NVIDIA, and they're like, probably not. But we'll take your code though if you still want to keep open sourcing that.
I think the end of Windows 10, is going to cause a bump in Linux. I bet you, of the people that are going to switch, it's probably like 3% would go from 10 to Linux, but it's still going to be, I think, a sizable number. And I think with you start including that, including the handhelds are going to be coming out because hey, they don't have to license it with Microsoft. It's easier to do. A lot of this is already just plug and play. Then that's going to start getting a big enough percentage that I think more game manufacturers are going to say, hey, we're not going to write this for Linux, but let's make sure it's Proton compatible. Or maybe, it's not. Let's add this patch to Proton so that it will be compatible. And we'll have more of that going forward.
Or just write it for Proton, not Windows.
Well, that would be DirectX 12 or 11.
Yeah,
or 10.
That's an interesting thought. I don't think there is a like dedicated Proton API, but yeah, you could totally do that. You could write it for Windows and then test it on Proton the entire time and make that sort of your targeted API.
If you're a AAA house, you're going to be able to call up Steam and go, hey, give us some documentation of the, what protocols do you fully support? What don't you support in DirectX 12, for example? And they would do it if you're a AAA house.
Oh, absolutely.
Would they even need to in Proton open source?
It would just make it easier to have the documentation than
you don't have EA developers. Let's just say EA. You don't have developers at EA that know the ins and outs of getting something to work on Proton the way that they do getting something to work on Windows.
Yeah, they could spend lots of time and lots of money learning and digging in, like open source developers. But there's no reason when you can just talk to the experts.
So I can just see this conversation. EA calls Valve. Valve says, "Hey, crossover. What would they use?"
Well, for sure, right? It's the crossover guys that do a lot of this. It's not the only ones. There's some other companies out there that Valve has hired to do this. But I mean, that's part of what being a company like Valve is all about, is having this Rolodex, which for you kids out there, that was before we all had cell phones. We would put people's names and numbers on pieces of paper, and a Rolodex was this neat thing that you could roll, and the papers would like flip automatically, and so you could flip through the list of people that Whereas nowadays we just kind of scroll through our contacts. It's the same thing.
And when we did start transitioning to smartphones, one of the first apps was called Rolodex.
Now we should call it a Scrollodex.
Scrollodex. Yep. Valve has a deep Scrollodex.
And as Harold Finch in the chat says Proton is probably the best thing that's happened to Linux gaming, for sure. And I would agree, because all the feedback I've read from people that do native development of games on Linux it's just the APIs change and everything. It's just very hard to say it's going to run on Arch, Fedora, and a Debian distribution, and just keep up with it, and not even counting all the unique ones like SUSE and
And what's good for Linux gaming is good for Linux in general.
Yeah.
Really. Speaking of which, what would really help would be getting some help with documentation.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming.
Yeah. So, are you looking to help open source, as Microsoft has been doing, and be part of the community? Gnome could use your help. So the Gnome release team is issuing a call for help, as Gnome help and the associated Gnome documentation are much in need of some assistance. That's what they say. So documentation, it's one of those things that people often ignore, forget about, don't put a lot of effort into. But it's also one of those things that almost anyone of any skill level can help and contribute to. So you always want, lots of times people are like, well, how can I contribute? I don't know how to develop. I don't know how to code. I don't know how to do graphics. What can I do? Here's a thing you can do. But, if you are more into the development side, the GNOME help viewer called Yelp, which it's kind of weird not to be confused with the online review website. Yelp also isn't actively maintained. So while GNOME is using, for example, GTK4, Yelp is still stuck on GTK3, like GIMP, I guess. But anyway, contributing to the struggling documentation is the software also uses a niche mallard format that relies on its own tooling and is not actively maintained itself. So there's a lot of issues here with their documentation. So what we're looking at, is an out-of-date, insecure also. It's had some vulnerabilities. Help viewer, utilizing an obscure niche help format built on top of an old version of JTK. All right, here's what the solution is. I think this was, I don't know. I think this is kind of obvious somewhat. I didn't really read anybody saying this, but maybe it did. Maybe I missed it. But, it's going to be a lot of work, but necessary for long-term success, I believe. If you want to have good documentation, which everybody should want, 1, develop or find a new help app to use for GNOME help documentation. 2, use a format that isn't niche or proprietary to that app. This will make it portable and easier to maintain. Maybe something like Markdown or HTML or whatever, something that's standard, common, you can use outside of that app itself. 3, then you got to migrate the current documentation in the new system. That may be some of the hardest work, depending on what format you do. And I don't really know about this mallard, how hard it is to migrate. Probably, maybe someone has to make a migration tool once they figure out that converts it. If that doesn't exist, I don't know. 4, finally, update, add, and actively maintain the documentation going forward. So if this is something you're interested in, GNOME could use your help.
Has GNOME offered to spend any money on this? Are they going to hire anybody to help them do it?
I haven't seen that yet, and we all kind of know where their financial situations are, at least last time we did a story on that. Maybe things have improved.
Pay volunteers?
Oh, you can. Believe it or not, that is an option. You sure can. I mean,
maybe I'll volunteer then.
You sure can.
You sure can.
I just got to find some time to volunteer.
Yeah, that's the trick.
You can always retire.
What's that?
Yeah. So, what about Questing Quokka, Ken? If you're going to volunteer, maybe you should volunteer to help test Questing Quokka for Ubuntu.
I just may. But as you're talking about Question Kaka, we actually got confirmation this week on some more changes coming with, when he's saying Question Kaka, he actually means Ubuntu 25.10. Michael Larabelle writes about the Canonical kernel team confirming their plans to employ it's not even out yet, but they're talking about Linux 6.17 kernel and switching over to Crony by default. This will be replacing the systemd -timesync D. Now, Crony utilizes network time security. I'm sure Jonathan can give us more details on that. I'm just going to basically say that the NTS standard is more secure than NTP and can prevent spoofing and avoid possible man-in-the-middle attacks. And for those that don't know, NTP was Network Time Protocol. Now, Saurav Rudra wrote about the Question Quokka roadmap revealing 2 new applications. I'm not even sure how to pronounce this one. It's spelled P-T-Y-X-I-S. I'm going to say Pteixis. And the other one is Loop, which will respectively be the default terminal emulator and image viewer on Ubuntu 25.10. Pteixis has been designed with a strong focus on providing container integration and an intuitive user experience for both developers and power users alike. Some of its interesting features include integration for container tools like Podman, DistroBox, and I don't know if this is a mistype in my notes, but I've got ToolBX. And a terminal inspector for debugging issues when writing terminal apps. Similarly, Loop is a Rust-based modern image viewer for Gnome, replacing the aging Eye of Gnome image viewer. It takes advantage of GTK4 and libweta to offer a sleek and responsive user interface that doesn't feel clunky. Michael and Saurav's articles have more details and links if you are interested in other planned features or how to set up Crony now, or to just go down the rabbit hole with.
Yeah, so this is in addition to like the Rust stuff that they're doing. That's all landing in 25.10 as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be quite the adventurous update for them for Ubuntu. Really stretching their legs and getting everybody outside their comfort zones.
Jeff, I'm going to let you dive into Ubuntu 25.10 before I move to Ubuntu Studio 25.10.
Oh, I'll be on it, but yeah, they're really determined to be a much more cutting edge. They're kind of following Fedora in a less rolling or less frequent release format, but cutting edge on a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
well, that's what this interim release is for. Cutting your fingers on.
They still have an interim release every 6 months, just like Fedora has every 6 months. It's just Ubuntu also has the LTS
every 2 years.
Oh, I thought for some reason I thought Fedora was a little more frequent than 6 months.
No, it's every 6 months. It's twice a year.
Oh, okay. Then I guess it's there.
Unless something breaks, then it's sooner.
But with no, they don't do major releases sooner. Fedora is also a little bit more willing to ship major updates of components inside a release. So like Fedora 42 right now ships with the KDE 6.3 series. They will almost certainly update that to KDE 6.4 inside Fedora 42.
If 6.4 comes out before 43.
I think it's intended to. Even if it doesn't come out before, they may still jump to it. It's just the way they roll.
Yeah, mid-June is when 6.4 KDE comes out.
Yeah. So Jeff came to me before we started the show, and he's like, "Have we talked about CachyOS recently?" And I went and I looked. I'm like, "Dude, you talked about CachyOS just last week, but it was just some benchmarking numbers, and before that, it had been like a year and a half." So Jeff,
it was a side note.
CachyOS. Yeah. What's up with what is CachyOS? Remind us what's cool about it and what's new.
Well, last week, like I said, as Jonathan mentioned, we discussed CachyOS, and it was one of the fastest Linux distributions available for the general public when using the AMD mobile chips. See last week's show, Michael Larrable over at Phoronix had a big benchmark across multiple processors, and we looked at it. The top was Clear Linux, but it's not really a general usage. So CachyOS is the fastest general usage operating system on those AMD chips. Well, that was nice, but it came across my screen again this week, and it's in the spotlight thanks to an article on Boiling Steam, which is a Linux gaming website. Now, according to the article, now there's going to be a lot of caveats in here, so before you just say, "Oh no, that's wrong, not right," hear me out. They said CachyOS is the fastest growing Linux distribution based on a trend analysis using the Proton database, but they do have several disclaimers. Like 1, the data set may not fully represent all types of Linux users. 2, it might not entirely reflect the broader Linux gaming community. 3, the results could have biases based on who contributed to the database. Flatpak is listed in there, but it's not a distribution. It's just a reporting quirk from Steam. Feel free to ignore it. It's just how it gets reported. So don't have too much heartache on that. Arch Linux also appears strictly as a desktop OS, while Steam Deck OS is reported separately as Hollow ISO. So claims that Arch ranks first solely due to Steam Deck users are not accurate. So
that was my first thought.
Yeah, it is reported separately, so it is not including the Steam Deck. So, and the article linked in the show notes includes a video timeline showing monthly distribution popularity trends over the past several years, so you can see how they changed over the last several years per month. They animate it so you can see the bars go up and down and distributions come in and go out, and it's kind of neat. Now, the latest data from the April ranks the distributions, or just the top few. There's a lot more, but just hitting the top. Arch Linux has 20.9%, Linux Mint at 11.4%, Fedora at 8.7%, Ubuntu at 8.6%, Endeavor at 6.7%, CachyOS and Flatpak are both at 6.2%, Nebrara at 5.2%, and Bazite at 4.5%. And like I said, there's more distributions, but I just hit the top ones. And it's kind of interesting. CachyOS appeared on this list only a few months ago, but has been steadily climbing in popularity. Now, like I said, the article features visual growth trends, but they also have a nice image for the same thing, just with a static. It looked like stacked bar charts, basically. And you can see how things have risen and fallen over time. For example, Manjaro, which once held a significant portion of Linux gaming on Proton, has been shrinking, and it seems to be now a minor player. Again, with all those caveats, but those unfamiliar with CachyOS, just like Manjaro, it's based on Arch Linux. Now, CachyOS does something else. You can get a handheld optimized version. So, kind of dipping its toes into SteamOS that we just talked about. Now, a few observations they had on the data set, the author did. Arch-based distributions dominate with more than 37% of users in the report. Debian distribution came in second, and Fedora-based distributions ranked third. Again, it's big grain of salt taken here, but worth note is CachyOS rapid rise is worth noting. It just keeps growing every month they look at this, and it's on a pretty steady, noticeable growth trend. Now, they do also touch in the article on the downward trend for Manjaro and PopOS, and suggesting that both are probably going to continue to decline. Now, this is the author of the article speculates that Manjaro has long struggled with quality assurance, and there are better options that exist for users seeking a safe and efficient Arch-based distro.
Yep.
That's the author's words, not mine. And as for Pop! OS, its developers have reportedly been preoccupied with other projects, primarily the Cosmic Desktop. So they're leaving left over a little energy for maintaining the base distribution. They point out that Pop! OS's main download page still offers a version based on Ubuntu 22.04 LTS, along with a Raspberry Pi 4 image, which, the author notes is about 3 years outdated. So for full details, check out the article linked in the show notes and see what you think about this up-and-coming distribution. Personally, if I was going to try a distro based on Arch, I might try Cachy. It looks like it might be interesting.
It really fascinates me that we see so many of these becoming popular that are respins of existing sort of very old, very well-maintained distros. Sort of like what Ubuntu has historically been for Debian.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating.
It's interesting how these gaming distros seem to focus around Arch.
Yes. Well, so the data set they're working with is ProtonDB, right? So it is going to be a very gamer-centric data set. So that's why it's not terribly surprising that you see these distros that are sort of specifically designed for gaming, like Bazite and Nobara, and I guess CachyOS sort of fits into that same category. Being, well represented, maybe a little bit above what you would expect, because it's measuring what the gamers are using.
And I doubt you'll find any enterprise-based systems in the ProtonDB data.
Yeah,
you better not.
And very few people visiting this from enterprise Linux.
And it even said, that's why even at the beginning they said it doesn't represent all Linux gamers. These are Steam gamers. So there's a lot of
it doesn't represent all Linux users.
A lot of people playing solitaire out there.
We said
that's the game.
Yeah. So I think that's a big part of why so many of them are coming from the Arch based, because these are Steam gamers, and that is what SteamOS is. So yeah, it's interesting, super fascinating stuff. All right, shall we get into some command line tips?
Let's do it.
Who's first?
Let's do it. Rob's up first. Rob is first. Rob's gonna run away with it.
All right. I am still continuing on my More Utils series. I think after this, I only have one left. So sad to see it go. I know you're all depressed, but most of all, I'm depressed because it means I need to find some more things.
Got to work.
This one's kept me going and going. I hadn't had to think too hard. Anyway, today, my command line tip, it's another simple one. It is called zrun. So let me make sure to get that on the screen for those watching the video. So zrun, it's very simple. All it does is it will uncompress the arguments in a command. So for example, for those watching, I have a file.txt or file1.txt, I guess, and file1.txt.gz. So all I did was gzipped the file and made the other file there. So one is gzipped up and the other's not. So just for example, I'm going to cat them. So if I cat the file1.txt, it just shows a text. This is an example file, blah, 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 stuff like that. Now, if I were to cat the other one, the gzipped one, I get a bunch of garbage. Now, sure, if I had that file, I could uncompress it, run my command against it, and then I'd have all this extra stuff that I either needed to delete later or whatever. Instead, I could just do this in line. So if I run zrun space cat space file1.txt.gz, it's going to uncompress that and inline and put it right in as an argument. And I'm just doing cat because it's a real simple way to show what is happening there. But obviously, you can put any command there and and it's going to decompress those contents or uncompress those contents. So zrun, second to last tip in the More Utils series.
Yeah, very cool. There's a nifty little hack here that this documentation tells you about, and that is that you can link a name beginning with a Z, and when the link is executed, this is the equivalent to running zrun space proc. So you could make your own zcat command by linking zcat to zrun, and it'll just automatically do what you want it to do. That's very clever. I like that a lot.
That's cool.
That's real clever. All right. Ken, we are going to take another look at Pipewire and the PWCLI. What do we have this week?
Well, this week we're going to go back into the interactive mode, and we're going to be I'm going to be demonstrating using you've probably heard this term, Jonathan, object introspection commands.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and bring up my terminal. Let me resize that a little bit so that we can actually see everything instead of having the live over it. Just take me a moment here.
Just hit enter a couple times.
That works too. Unless these are screenshots, then you can't do that.
No, it's live TV.
Haha! We're live. We're doing it live.
And I'm feeling brave on doing it live on the physical computer, because I'm just doing inspections. Not going to actually be changing anything. It's going to be two commands: list-objects or ls. In fact, let's go ahead and type. Let's get into the Pipewire command line interface.
Yeah, that's PWCLI.
And yes, I still get that error when I do that. But the first one is list-objects. Now you can just run that all by itself. And yes, everything goes down. Let me go all the way back up so we can start at the top. And what you see here is a whole bunch of, as we're looking, right here at the very top, we have ID 0. It gives you the type, Pipewire, :interface, :core/4. That gives you the object serial, which in this case is 0, and the core name, which is Pipewire-0. Now, let's go back down to the very bottom, and you'll see we've got ID 159. This one is a Pipewire interface node. And the client API is Pipewire Pulse. The application name is OBS. The node name is OBS. Media class is Stream Input Audio. Media row is Production. And if you glance up, you'll see you've got some others that, looking at them, all look like they're dealing with audio. And let's go ahead and just scroll back for a minute, because I know we're going to have, we've got QPW graph for one application name, which is a client. And then a node, which is has a media class of stream output video, ID 139. But it's a bit hard to go through and find all that. So let's go ahead and narrow it down by typing what we're looking for. Now you can list the type of object you're looking for, from core to client, device, factory, module, node, or port. As I said, I'm going to type core first. And there is the core object. That's what we saw as 0. Now here's a really interesting one, is device. And there's quite a few devices on my machine. Glancing through all the information for those you listening, ID48, which is type Pipewire interface device, has a device description of HD Pro webcam C920 and a device name of v4l2_device.pcie or PCI dash, followed by a lot of zeros, underscores, and a D dash USB dash 0_3 dash _1.0. So if y'all remember when we went over PW-metadata, you could actually go in and change that device name to whatever you wanted to make it easier, especially in your QPW graph if you're running that. You got another device that's using the ALSA API is my Rembrandt Radeon High Definition Audio Controller. Sounds fancy, doesn't it? But it's basically just a HD audio generic device. And then I've got another audio device, which is called, it has a description of Family 17H/19H HD audio controller. I think y'all have heard me talk about that in the past. And that's ALSA_card.pci. And I'll let y'all read the rest of that when you watch it.
Those two are basically just the audio on your HDMI output and the audio on your physical output, right?
Yeah, line out, line in, and the headset go through that family one. Mm-hmm. Now, as we go on down, we'll see I've got another video device, ID number 119. It's got a device.api of v4l2. The device description is OBS virtual camera. And the device name it gives is v4l2_devices_devices_virtual_video for Linux_video2. So I've actually got that listed in my Pipewire. So I could actually do something with that if I wanted to make changes. And then, of course, I've got my Behringer my preamp that I'm using for my mic down here at the very end. Now, as I'd mentioned, you can also list clients. What's the difference between a client and a device? Well, the clients give you information like the process ID, user ID, and GID, as well as labels and the Pipewire access.
Yeah, sorry, those are programs. Your clients are your programs that are running, that are talking to Pipewire.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, there's also, why would you want to look for a factory?
This is going to give you info probably about the defaults of how some of these things are going to come up.
Whether it's going to have scrolling through here, you'll see it's got like factory name of metadata, spa-device-factory, where the factory type name is a Pipewire interface device, or spa-node-factory has a type name of Pipewire interface node. That's another one I'm going to go through in a minute. And I'm looking for endpoint stream. I don't see port. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you the ports. Guess how I'm doing this. List objects, port. And here's all my ports. And glancing through them real quickly as I scroll back, it looks like a lot of them are audio, though we do have one here, which is a video capture port for my HD Pro webcam. And then you've got the OBS monitors for audio.
And then if you wanted to get more information about one of these devices in particular, that's where the info command comes in?
Correct. Let's take the very last one we've got here, ID 157. You just type info 157 to look at that one. And there it gives all the information to include the properties. You've got the format, .dsp, 32-bit float mono audio, port monitor, whether that will be true or false. Port group gives you the stream, port ID 0, port direction, in this case out. Object path, it says it's OBS:monitor 0. Port name, monitor-_FL. Port alias is OBS:monitor_FL. Then it gives you the node ID. Now, I don't think it done nodes yet, but we could go info. That node ID was 159. And there's a lot of information about that node. One interesting thing is it gives you what the permissions are for the node. In this case, it's RWXM, which is read, write, execute, and monitor. And in this case, it says that the state is idle. Client API is Pipewire Pulse. So it's an audio stream, obviously. Application name is OBS, gives you the icon name as well. Media role, in this case, production. Process ID, user, host, and binary. Language, in this case, it says it's en_us.utf8. In other words, English US version. And it's using the UTF-8. Now, here's the one that's probably going to confuse a lot of people since I am running on Wayland. It's window.x11.display equals :1.
That is a little interesting.
And I'll prove to you when I get done here that I am on Wayland. The easy way.
The easy way.
Well, actually, I don't even have to do that. Y'all remember was showing kwin earlier? That only happens in Wayland. But you got all this information that you can use. Where this is advantageous is you could take this and use it to create a virtual device that mimics this node, so that you could use it to do maybe to connect to before actually connecting to this node. And now, if you really want to get all the information, Info has a all option. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to quit and then clear. And guess why I'm doing that? So it's easier to scroll back to the beginning. And I'm blocking it so you can't see it, but the bar for scrolling way down here is about that big.
Oh.
And you see how far back I'm going?
Lots and lots and lots of stuff.
Yeah. So if you wanted to, you could do that from the command line.
pwcdli info all, just run the whole thing. Then you can pipe it around however you want to through grep less or more.
I'm off the center. There we go. And now, or you could save it to a file.
Yep.
And that way you could have that as a reference for pulling up that information about all that stuff. And then go back into PWCLI, and I'm going to show you next week how you can create devices.
No. Not have to use one of the graphing tools to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. And let's see. Jeff, what is Y-Cruncher?
Well, today's command line tip isn't so much of a tip as it is a fun experiment or maybe just a way to push your computer to its limits. So Y-Cruncher is a powerful number crunching tool capable of computing pi and other mathematical constants to trillions of digits. So Y-Cruncher is designed for extreme computation. It's multi-threaded, meaning it can leverage several several cores and multi-core processors, or even multiple CPUs for calculations. It's also vectorized, allowing it to take advantage of advanced instructions like, for example, AVX 512 for faster processing. On top of that, it can handle swap space, meaning if your computations require more memory than available, it can offload to your hard drives or even multiple drives. And it's built to be somewhat fault tolerant. So if there's a computational issue or your hardware hiccups, it might be able to recover. They specifically said somewhat because it's not fully fault tolerant. So what can you compute with Y-Cruncher? Pi, the golden ratio, E, also known as Euler's number, and you can also do Euler-Mascheroni's constant. You can do square roots and logarithms of numbers. And if you try to say, well, I want the square root of 9, it's going to come back and say, yeah, that's an exact number. That's boring. Give me something else, and Catlin's constant, or you can even do custom constants using user-defined formulas. So if you check out the article linked in the show notes, you'll find not only this list of record-breaking computations, but there's a link in that article to a world record run by Storage Review where pi was calculated to 202 trillion digits, and they go over what they had to do. And there's a link to a video from Linus Media Group, or as a lot of people know it as Linus Tech Tips, where they showed their Guinness record of 300 million digits calculation of pi. And they go over how they set up the hardware, what it took, the software, all of it. And it ties into last week's tip where they specially configured their CPUs to be able to handle the data. So they would specifically have cores just to handle the caching of data. And they had to take into consideration the architecture of the machines. You didn't want, data passing between CPUs if you could help it, just to keep things rolling. And so it was really interesting watching the hardware and the software optimizations, configurations, and what it took. I mean, it was a beast of a machine to be able to do it. And it really, you could say machines. It also includes links to mathematical constants and computational methods, and a fact explaining key details, such as why the program runs on a CPU rather than a GPU, and among other insights. In the computational methods, I mean, they go over like some of the equations used to how you calculate pi and these other constants, so that you can see the math behind it. Now it's going to be calculus based, so there's a lot of limits, some integrals, things like that. So it's probably geared a little more for engineers and mathematicians and maybe the curiosity inclined. But if you don't have to know the equations to be able to calculate it, but I will say that it can take a fair bit of memory and whatnot to be able to calculate really big numbers. I should also mention, and they mentioned this in the article, if you decide to use a hard drive, if you have an SSD, be in mind that they mentioned that if you're really making a big number, this thing will thrash an SSD and just basically wear it out.
Oh,
the
that's
amount
funny.
of the amount of hitting the drive, it will do if you're not just going to limit yourself to memory. So yeah, take a look at it, and I did some playing around with it. It's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
happy crunching, everybody.
Very neat.
Yep.
It was 300 trillion decimal points.
Yeah, 300
say?
trillion.
Oh,
You said
trillion,
million.
yes.
Though
Yeah.
I just did a Google, and I don't know. The very first article I pull up says 3 quintillion.
They listed as 300 trillion.
Okay.
Digits of pi. Who can tell?
So, you got any computers that can take 500 terabytes of memory?
No, I do not.
It's a lot. It's a lot of memory.
Hey Jeff.
Yeah.
You want to know how I crunch pie?
At the restaurant and a
With
fork?
my teeth.
I
There's
don't
some-
crunch it, I chew it.
There's some pecan pie bars upstairs that I think I'm about to go crunch.
Ooh.
All right. So I've got a quick tip. This one is probably not something that you're going to use on a daily basis, but it is something that you might want to know about. And there's actually two of them, LSMem and CHMem. LSMem you might get some use out of because it'll work on your machine and it'll tell you how much memory you've got. But the really interesting thing is it will tell you how that memory is split up into blocks and whether it's removable. So LSMem and CHMem are designed for big iron machines where you have multiple banks and multiple rows of memory where you can hot swap that memory. And so if you're talking about like a super high availability cluster, you might want to be able to go in with CHMem and turn some memory off because you know you've got a problem there. Yank a stick of memory out, get the new one, punch it in there, run the command with CHMem again to turn it back on, and literally hot swap a stick of RAM. Now, that's not a thing that most of us are going to be doing on our own systems, but it might be useful to know exactly where your system is putting its memory and some of those things. So, for example, on this laptop, it shows me that I've got 15.5 gigs total online memory. And those are split up into two different banks. I have a 3.3 gig bank that starts at 0, and then the remaining 12.3 gigs start at it's a 0x00010000, and goes off through like 40 FFFF. So that probably doesn't mean a whole lot to most of you, but it is really fascinating to see. And again, this is something that Linux can do. And maybe, just maybe, somebody out there's got a system that actually supports this. But if you run across these two commands, that is what they're for. So I found it. I was looking at commands. It's like, oh, what LS things have we not covered? And this is one that came up. It's like, oh, that's fascinating.
That is cool. And for those that have never been in an enterprise server room, it's easy to change memory a lot of times because your servers, you can slide them out on rails, pop the top, and they've got like a hinge top or an easily removed top. Pull it off. You have your banks of memory. Pull it out. Put it in. Put the top back on. I mean, it's quick attach. Slide it in, and you're going.
Don't spill your coffee.
Yeah. Well, you're not allowed to have food.
I was just thinking in a good data center, that's one of the things that it's on the list you're not allowed to bring in. I've been in data centers before where they're like, no cardboard, by the way. You have to unbox your server before you get in there because you're not allowed to have cardboard. I'm like, why no cardboard? Like it'll get pulled up against a fan and stuck there. Like, oh, yeah, that'd be bad, huh?
Even just the dirt and contamination will build up on the coolers, and
yeah, that too.
Yeah, you treat it like a semi-clean room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool stuff.
I've never cleaned a semi, but I know some people have.
There you go. All right, it is time to let these knuckleheads, get the last word in. Rob gets to go first against my better judgment. And
I get to go first, so that way I'm out of here first. You can get rid of me. All right. If you want to know more about me, you can find me at robertpcampbell.com. It's, for those watching the video, it's been down there in the corner the whole time. So robertpcampbell.com, it's always there. On that page, you can connect with me at There's little links for LinkedIn, Twitter, Blue Sky, Mastodon. And if you really want, there's a spot to donate a cup of coffee to me in $5 increments. So you're not really giving me a coffee. You're giving me $5 or however many $5 you want to give me. That's $5 US, by the way, for those. I know we have some people outside of the States too. And I don't even know if it works for them because I know sometimes sites do weird things on different countries. I have no idea. I've never tried it. But give it a shot. Let me know.
When you go on vacation, Rob, outside of the country, you have to go pull it up and see if you can donate a coffee to yourself.
Oh, yeah. I'll be doing that sometime soon here.
Yeah, there you go.
No, you need to donate a coffee to the rest of us.
Oh, there you go. That's a better idea. Yeah, Jeff has it right. That's a better idea.
Yeah, I'll just give you the money for that because why pay them their cut that goes to me?
It's the experiment,
and I check it out.
Exchange rate.
That's the whole experiment, man. That is the point. All right, Ken.
Well, I just wanted to share a couple of articles. The first is by Liam Proveman. It's about the FOSS recreation of Amiga OS making progress.
Amiga OS.
And
I love that.
That's probably the longest open source on OS that represents from the 80s that you can still run today.
Nice.
The second one, I think Mirror Orr and Travis K, a couple of our Discord members, may find more interesting. It's an article by Michael Larabelle about FFmpeg.
Yeah, I've been watching the FFmpeg stuff. I need to try to get them on Floss Weekly and talk about it too. It'd be fun.
Have they ever been on?
If they have, it's been a long time. They need to come back. Need to get them back.
If it's been more than 2 years, it's probably time for them to come back.
Definitely. All right, Jeff.
I was a big Amiga fan, so I'm going to have to check that out. And for the oldest open source, I would say we need to look up when Open VMS came out. That could beat it. Other than that, you can find me both on LinkedIn through Rob's LinkedIn, and thank you to the people that have actually linked up with me through Rob's page, and definitely always love that. The other thing is you can find me on Floss Weekly this week, so definitely check that out. Very, very good show. And closing with a poem. Clouds hold your data. Where does your data reside when it's sunny? Have a great week, everybody.
That's great. Thank you guys. Appreciate y'all being here. All right. So I don't have my normal monitor in the background to point at. There's no Hackaday, but you can find me there. Hackaday.com. That is where Floss Weekly lives. That's also where my security column goes live every Friday morning. And we sure have a lot of fun doing that. And hope you guys go and check that out too. Other than that, we appreciate everybody being here. Those that catch us live and on the download, those that watch and those that listen. And, if you watch and you listen and you want to be able to do it ad-free, you should consider Club TWiT. Go and check that out. It's about the price of a cup of coffee per month. And, with that said, we appreciate everybody being here, and we will see you next week on the Untitled Linux Show.
Hey, buddy, are you a geek? Are you a tech enthusiast? Then I would love to invite you to join a tech community like no other. You can gain exclusive access to our incomparable quality tech content with Club TWiT. As a member, you'll enjoy all TWiT TV shows ad-free, plus access private video feeds for insider shows like iOS Today, Home Theater Geeks, and so much more. Dive into the members-only TWiT Plus bonus feed for behind-the-scenes content, club discussions, and special events. But here's the best perk. Join our incredible Discord community to watch live show productions, chat with hosts, and participate in exclusive members-only activities. It's your backstage pass to the world of TWiT. Whether you're a tech enthusiast or a lifelong learner, Club TWiT elevates your knowledge while entertaining your interests. Get 2 weeks free when you sign up now and unlock unparalleled access at twit.tv/clubtwit. That's twit.tv/clubtwit. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you and welcome to the club.